Okay, welcome. We're live from Washington, D.C. I'm Christina Bear. I'm the founder of a law firm called Just Well, and we represent sick families against those who made them sick. I got involved in this particular issue at the invitation of a very brave woman named Jamie Simic, who called me from her hospital bed and said, "I have been poisoned. Can you help?" And I could help. And I flew to Hawaii and I met Jamie and I met many, many other families who have been affected by the Red Hill water crisis. And most of them, all of them, I should say, still do not have water today. That is not okay. These families still do not have clean water, and it's not okay. We now represent over 100 clients in Hawaii, and all of them do not have water. And so we came here to Washington, D.C. so that our clients could share their stories with congressional leaders. And they're here today to tell you about those meetings and to tell you what they are asking of congressional leadership and to report back to Hawaii on their meetings in Washington, D.C. So let me introduce first Jamie Simic. She is a Navy spouse and has been battling this issue for many, many years. She has been sick since 2014 when we know that there was a spill of jet fuel into the contaminated drinking water. And that water has been contaminated probably ever since. But we also know that there were more spills in 2021 in May, and then again in November. The Navy has said that it was operator error, and they've said that they're going to make it right. And we continue to give them opportunities to make it right. And it's not okay that these families still do not have clean water. So let me turn it over to Jamie Simic. And after Jamie Simic, Major Mandy Fyant will also be speaking. She is here in her personal capacity as a mother of 2 kids who've been affected and a spouse of who has also been affected. So to Jamie Simic.
Hi, friends and family. And yes, I am going to call every single one of you friends and family. We're family. Like the last town hall, I wore something significant today. I wore white for peace and for purity, because we come in peace, we come in love, and we just want pure drinking water again. I'm also wearing black for mourning of the denial of all the family members that still do not have drinking water, for mourning of all the family members that are still severely ill, and we go in to get testing and they tell us that there is none on the island at the time, or they will not draw our labs. We're mourning for our children that are ill and we can't get them help, because I know I can't get my children help, and I have gone all the way up the chain. Mourning for our pets, mourning for our way of life, mourning for our belongings and our possessions that are not being acknowledged as contaminated, mourning for our peace. So today, Mandy, myself, Jim, and Christina, we met with 9 different congressional leaderships and key leaders, spreading awareness of what's truly going on in Hawaii. We have heard you guys. We have been with you guys. You guys have been with us. You guys give us the strength. I wish every single one of you could be here to hear what we discussed and the issues that we brought to the table. I'll tell you, they hear us. I'll tell you, there were some really good meetings. And I'll tell you that it was very heartbreaking to know that they still do not understand on the mainland what the plight of Hawaii is at this moment, still today, because I'm still receiving pictures, even being gone, of severely contaminated water of others' homes. So I'm not just speaking on my home, I'm speaking on behalf of the others. But today we made some progress. We went in and we had all the questions, 174 comments, I think it was, and we narrowed it down to a 1-page letter with 3 asks. And our 3 asks are contaminants are. I'm not going to call it jet fuel anymore, because we know there's jet fuel, but we don't know the rest of the contaminants, and we deserve to know. So we're calling for an investigation and for the release of all of our water results that have already been taken, and also a release of the contaminants that are in our water. We're also calling for individual testing of all homes, 100% of the homes. And for flushing or for change of direction of the neighborhoods that are failing the neighborhood flush or individual flush, and not just continuing to flush the contaminated water onto the open lawns and not into the drainage system as they say they are doing. We also ask for continuum of medical care for the long term. And we also ask for testing to be acknowledged and brought to the island for anybody that has been contaminated. There's such a long list of things that we ask for, and we may not reach them all, but we have some amazing leaders, and we also have some amazing staffers that are excited, that are heartbroken, that are shocked at the conditions that we have been forced to continue to live in, with the denials of testing of our bodies and of our water. As I've said from the beginning, we are the evidence. We are the scientific proof. It's all right in front of them. They say they don't have the data. They have the data. They're just not testing for it. So one of my main focuses was to bring awareness for the testing. And I feel, can't promise, but I think we knocked on enough doors. I think we rattled enough bells. I think we had enough noisemakers today to bring the awareness and the attention that we're also calling for. We are also asking for whistleblower protection of military family members or spouses, because unfortunately the active duty service member is protected, but the spouses aren't. I'm not going to go through it all because Mandy is a powerful force and she has been an integral part of her side of it with being in the military and being active duty and what her family is going through. And this is truly a collaboration and a team effort, down from the 174 comments to I'm not exactly sure the number of clients, but the 2,000 people on the Joint Base Pearl Harbor contamination page. If it was not for each and every single one of you, we would not be where we are standing today, holding the meetings that we're holding today. So I encourage you guys to please keep using your voices, keep rising, keep documenting, document, share your testimony. They may be able to shut down one of us, but they can't shut us all down. And the truth always prevails. Keep sharing the truth, keep protecting yourself, looking out for each other, and we'll bring peace back to our lives. Thank you for the support, and thank you for looking out for us and each other. Can't wait to get back to continue to share everything with everybody. We'll be posting some more pictures. I love you guys. You have no idea the strength you have given me. And I appreciate every single one of you. Major Mandy. I'm just going to say Major Mandy.
That's fine. Hi, everyone. My name is Amanda Feint. I appreciate you all signing on today on Zoom and those who are in the room today. So for the media and for all of our friends and family back in Hawaii, thank you so much. As Christina stated, I am a major in the U.S. Army, but I am not here today to speak as a representative of the military or for my unit. I am here as a mother of 2 children, ages 1 and 4, who were poisoned on American soil by a military asset. My children's on-base child development center, ran by the Navy, was not providing clean water, potable, bottled, or anything like that until 20 days after thousands and thousands of gallons of jet fuel spilled into our drinking water. This is how I first became an advocate for this whole water crisis. Getting our CDC, comprised of approximately 250 children under the age of 5 years old, clean water. That's not my job. That's not my day job. but it's what I did because I'm a mom and because I care. I care because we say in the military all the time that families are our greatest asset. And so I believe that the Navy failed our children. I believe it was negligent that my children and all of your children in the CDC did not get clean water. My children both ended up in the hospital, both with severe abdominal pain, diarrhea, projectile vomiting, and dehydration. I had to bear hug my 1-year-old as the nurses tried to stick him multiple times to flush his system because he was severely dehydrated. When my daughter ended up in the hospital, the doctor that was providing her care asked us, when was the last time that your children were exposed? And at the time I didn't know. So I made a couple of phone calls to the Navy folks that I had met just the week prior to get our kids clean water. And I was told in that phone conversation, hey, I called them for the reason that you all have these test results and the doctors are asking when the last time our children have been exposed, and I can't tell them. And I was told in that conversation that I could file a FOIA request just like anyone else. And so that's when I started having grave concern over somehow the Navy believing that they reserve the right to know more about my children and their health, more than I did as their parent. I also, during this hospital visit, was told by a doctor something that no parent wants to hear. And they said, hey, mom, you might still be poisoning your own child because that plastic, that porous material that your daughter is drinking out of, whether you're putting clean water or not, it may still be contaminating her because it was previously washed, likely with contaminated water. So I've continued to say that clean water in a contaminated cup does not equal clean water. And I have tried, I spoke to very senior leaders about this. And to date, I spoke again I've been fighting tooth and nail to get personal use plastic. So, we're talking anything from silicone or plastic toys, that my 1-year-old will inevitably put in his mouth, just like most of your children, to sippy cups, to food prep items. I think in the grand scheme of things, especially since these are they're our dependents, they didn't raise their right hand. They didn't volunteer for this. We should be taking care of them, in my opinion, the most. But to date, I have still yet to receive. I've asked multiple times, when is it, in the military, we work on these projected completion dates. There's tons of completion dates that are out there right now for flushing operations and things like that. But I can't get a straight answer of when we project to be done replacing all of these personal use plastics. I think it's a basic ask. It certainly isn't that expensive. In fact, we know that some organizations like the Armed Forces Housing Advocates have gotten money to donate some of these things to our CDCs, and they can't even get a call back from very senior leaders to accept this, these donations. So that's kind of like my background and sort of where I got involved. I'm not here as a representative for the Army, but I think it's important to know that I've been in the military for almost 16 years. I'm a personnelist. So people are my passion. And again, we say all the time that people are our greatest asset. And I will tell you, and I've said it before, I as a field grade officer don't feel like an asset. I don't feel like our families feel like an asset. We wouldn't have flown here from Hawaii if we felt certainly like an asset, if you all felt like an asset. So Jamie and I flew out here because, like all of you, we have heard the Navy testify to Congress over and over again about transparent and how transparent they are being. And they've admitted, firsthand that, and we appreciate this, they've admitted publicly that they have lost our trust. And that's true. And we appreciate it. And there's been some apologies handed out. But what's happening right now and what happened last week, what's happening with these flushing operations, and specifically when we're talking about testing homes, 10% of homes and calling it good, the 90% of homes that are remaining, how do you build that trust? Like how is only testing 10% of homes rebuilding any trust? As Jamie stated, today we met with 9 members of Congress and a lot of key leaders who have passions for veterans, military families, the people of Hawaii, folks who are, I mean, toxic exposure is a very relevant conversation. That's what we've learned. There's a lot of things that are being worked. And we were happy to hear that because it's relevant. But the bottom line is history is repeating itself. This is not the first time something like this has happened. It's happened again. We already know what the long-term health effects are. Ask the over 1 million people that were poisoned by contaminated water at Camp Lejeune. They're still fighting today. So we did come here with very specific asks based off of, most of you that are on here. And I'll just kind of go through the list, and we're certainly open for questions. I see a ton of people that are already, starting to ask. I know there's some folks in this room, but we've asked Congress for a couple of things, support and help with a couple of things. One, hold these folks accountable. Accountability and transparency has been like our number one. And that includes testing. So we want to see the water test results. We want to know exactly when the first time you tested, because I'll tell you this, I received an email on the 3rd of December saying your water has been cleared to use. And that was about 6 other neighborhoods at the time. And I later found out from a very senior leader in the Navy that cleared for use was only determined by self-reporting at the time, not by actual testing. So we want to know when our water was first tested. We want to know exactly what is in our water. I personally would like to know what my 1- and 4-year-old have ingested. And so, they have their whole lives to live. I think that we should be privy to that. We've again asked for more, than 10%. In fact, anything less than 100% of home testing is unacceptable. This does not restore trust. So enough with telling Congress and in telling our community that you're doing everything you can to restore our trust. Because if I'm part of that 90% that's not getting tested, you don't have my trust. We've asked for third-party research. We've asked for folks to come in outside of the military and do a thorough research project, if you will. So funding for that. And that includes testing. For me as a service member, I got an EKG hooked up as soon as I got to the hospital. I got pain medication. I've said this quite a few times, I was having abdominal pain to the point of it felt like labor contractions. So I was treated, I got a full blood workup. But my kids and my husband, who's a civilian, who came in the same weekend I didn't get any of that. And that has been echoed, I know, through all of Christina's, clients, but many of you, we are fighting this whole medical piece. And so we have asked for support for military medical, anything from having a toxicologist or an epidemiologist here on island. We've asked for the third-party research for testing. We keep hearing, I keep hearing the science. There's not enough science. I mean, you've got an entire science project sitting on the island of Oahu right now. You've got so many folks who do want answers, who do care about the future of our military and our families. Why we are not doing basic tests, why there is not a standard level of care beyond military service members. So for our families, non-DoD affiliates that have been poisoned by a Navy asset, by Navy water, they deserve the same level of testing that we would give to any active duty service member. So again, basic labs, EKG, chest scans, any of that. I mean, that's, if you call poison control, if you call any of our ER doctors, if you go in, that's like the basic, outside of a military treatment facility, that's basic what they're going to give you. And so we believe that should be done here so that it's adequately documented. Also too, like the second order effects of that is, I mentioned before, this is not the first time. And quite honestly, it's not going to be the last. And that's a really hard pill to swallow, but it's just true, right? So I would love to see, some like a bill passed or something. And we've talked about this at length today that covers military families in the future. How are we going to do that though if nothing's documented? How are we going to do that if we're just treating folks that come in clinic for superficial symptoms and send people home with, children's Tylenol and some Zofran to help with nausea? If you're not actually testing, So I'd love to see something passed, a bill passed, that says, hey, if you served in Operation Restore Trust, is what someone's, if you see, I mean, if you've lived in this area during this time, you will get medical for the rest of your life. Thank you for your service to our country. Military spouses and children come along with that. They have certainly been poisoned. And again, they didn't volunteer for this. We want that. We want that to happen. The other thing that we have asked for, and Jamie sort of mentioned it, is, you know, I'll be honest, you know, I'm dual hatted as a mom and a service member, and that's been a real challenge for me. The first time in my career that I've ever dealt with something like this. And retaliation, it's being talked about so much. Jamie mentioned that, you know, under the Whistleblower Protection Act, spouses are not covered. And what we're seeing is, you know, we've got service members who are going to work. We've got flushing teams that are coming to their house, and the spouses are either homeschooling their kids, or they've got COVID concerns, or they haven't been given test results, which the Navy said that we'd be privy to before flushing operations started. And they're denying access to their home because they don't feel safe. And that ends up coming back on the service member. That's unacceptable. It's unacceptable that, you know, I just think that something's got to be done, especially when we're talking about how this has affected families. I mean, can you even imagine a 1 and a 4-year-old being a field grade officer and feeling silenced, if you will, or that you know, my leave will be held against me, or that my OER will be affected, that my first look, you know, like, could potentially, just because I'm advocating for my children, just because I am trying to speak up and make sure that my kids are, you know, properly tested, medically documented, that they are getting the medical care that they need. It's just been tough. I mean, retaliation is real. I think that we need to work on some freedom of speech when it comes to the military, so that everyone feels comfortable being able to speak out and advocate and protect their family when it's not being done by the Navy. I'm sure there's a couple of other things, but that's pretty much the gist of it. And so we're certainly open for questions and turn it back over to Christina, but all in all, a successful day. And thank you all for your support.
Okay, questions from the gallery.
Yeah, sure. Mandy, I was wondering, how did you all decide who to meet with today? And then did you feel like leaving today, like something would happen, like something would come of your efforts?
So I'm going to repeat the question, and then Mandy, I'm going to have you come back up and answer. The question was, how did you determine who you met with today? And how do you feel about how the meetings went?
Well, first and foremost, we're lucky enough to have an awesome, well-connected legal team. And we've been well resourced, but we strategically wanted to speak to individuals on both sides that have an invested interest in things like toxic exposure, and who potentially have worked on bills and coverage for Camp Lejeune, or, like I said before, toxic exposure is a very relevant subject. So we selected folks anyone really who would talk to us, but Veterans Affairs committees, Armed Forces Houses committees, you know, that have a passion for veterans and our military service members and our families. That's sort of how they were selected. And then as far as how do we feel leaving it, we've already been back brief on a couple of things that are already in the works, which is really nice. And it gives us a little bit of hope. It sort of allows us to see a little bit of light at the end of the tunnel, to look folks in the eye, to know that we've flown all the way here from Hawaii. We care, it's important. And the folks that we spoke to today, they care, and it's important to them. So we're leaving fairly confident that, you know, we have a laundry list of asks, you know, go big or go home, right? But we know that it all won't happen, and we know that things will be slower than we really want them to be. But this is a very current situation. It's happening in real time. And like I said before, you know, we in the military will leave. We'll leave in a couple of years, but the people of Hawaii will still be there, and more military folks will come back in. And we just want to make sure that, you know, some of these things are addressed and put into policy, and that there's a plan for the future. So that we're not like recreating the wheel every time something like this happens.
Next question. Yes.
Hey, Bob Carey from the Independence Fund, and we've been working a lot on toxic exposure. There's a lot of bills going through to go to the House and Senate right now, and they're focusing a lot on burn pits and toxic exposure from more, well-known toxic substances. As someone that, used to skim the JP5 off my water on my pit of a ship back in the 90s. Are you getting any indications that people will also look at putting, this sort of stuff into those toxic exposure bills? Or, and how can we help?
Manny, this is your floor. Come back. Repeat this question. And then.
So I think
guess the question is, how can this be addressed in the toxic exposure legislation that's moving through Congress right now?
certainly I think it's super relevant. I think that we have an opportunity to use this just like we did, and we had some things put in for Camp Lejeune. I mean, this situation mirrors the Camp Lejeune case, and we are very blessed to have the Camp Lejeune team that's sort of helping us and has reached out to help and support us. And I think based off conversations today that there are some changes in the works. I feel like that's all I'm allowed to say on that.
Yeah.
Okay. Sorry.
No, it's good. Thank you.
Yeah, and I think there's legislation that has been passed as to Camp Lejeune. It's directly applicable here.
Yeah.
So history has repeated itself. And now, unfortunately, some of the remedies that helped in that situation can help here as well, including that VA benefits are presumptive for anyone who was there at a particular time and has a fertility. And we asked very specifically today to everyone we met with that the same would apply here, because the same benzene in the oil in the water at Camp Lejeune is in the water here. We expect that the maladies will be identical, very sadly. This is not rocket science. In the back are some packets, and we can get them to anyone who is remote as well. But I have Wikipedia, and I'll say it again and again. This is not rocket science. Jet fuel is very harmful to your health. It causes long-term cancer. It causes kidney damage. It causes liver damage. We know that it causes GI problems right now. I want to say that I have to have hard conversations every day with families who are going through this, and many of them report incontinence for both their kids and themselves. So they're literally losing nerve feeling and losing control over their systems. They're having to go into meetings and wear Depends when they're in our armed services. It's not okay what's happening. And so as their attorney, I'm going to keep saying it. I'm going to keep saying three things. One, it's not okay. They still don't have clean water. These families are still displaced, many of them. And even if they're at home, they don't have clean water. We are now 2 to 3 months in, and we don't have clean water. Both of these families here are in hotel rooms, one hotel room for a family of 4. Both of them have kids who have neurological challenges. I mean, it's inexcusable that we still don't have clean water and they still don't have safe houses. And then 2, that they still don't know the contaminants that were in the water that they ingested. The Navy has that information. They haven't released it. What exactly are the contaminants that were in the water? And then 3rd, they're still not getting adequate medical care. It's not okay. There's a basic standard of care when you've had toxic exposure. And I'm not talking about some like woo-woo integrative stuff. I'm talking about when you go to an ER, what is the standard of care for someone who has had exposure? And it's you run basic labs, you do EKG, you do x-rays. None of that's being provided to these families other than the armed services members. So those are the 3 things that I'm going to continue to advocate for. I want to take one final question from the gallery from online.
Yeah, there's a question here from the Hawaii News. It's a few-part question. One is, how many Congress people did you meet with today? Can Jamie and Amanda say what specific housing areas they live in? And finally, for Amanda, as an enlisted member, are you worried about retaliation?
Okay, I'm going to have Jamie speak first about the neighborhoods that are affected and her neighborhood in particular. And then Jamie's also going to speak about retaliation And there are other retaliatory issues that don't need to be addressed on publicly.
Hi, so I live on Hickam Communities in Hallie-Nakoa, and Hallie-Nakoa is still beyond severe. My husband was just there today. There's still fuel, there's still vapors, there's still fumes. Walking down the street, you can smell it coming out of the neighborhoods. You can smell it in Hallie-Nakoa too. We are still waiting on D2's individual results and also the neighborhood results, even though Iroquois Point and several other places that have been tested after Hallie-Nakoa and Hallie-Nakoa 2 have already come back. As far as the retaliation, whoo, Mahalani, you got to get with me on that one.
Tell us
That-
about your own experience of retaliation.
I can do that now?
You can.
Okay. So a lot of you guys, I've been saying that I've been keeping a lot of things to my chest. And I have. Even I don't think the lawyers know everything I go through, or my husband. I pick and choose who I tell what. It's my self-defense mechanism to protect others. When I was in the hospital, or when I went to the hospital, I went with my son and my daughter, asking for help for all three of us. I couldn't breathe. Everything was on fire. I lost my bowels. It's the first time I've said it publicly. Because it happens constantly. And as I laid in the hospital bed and projectile vomiting, nothing in my system, 98 pounds, losing my bowels, got to watch 3 British soldiers come into the hospital on their sub 2 hours away from 4 minutes of hydrocarbon exposure. There was a 32-week pregnant woman across from me that was concerned about her baby. She laid there for hours as well. These soldiers, British soldiers, got top of the line care, got the chest x-ray, got the labs, had teams of doctors surrounding them. And it was just ironic that they put them next to our bed. After they were done giving them the top of the line care and admitting them, they went over to the pregnant woman, told her there was no way she was that sick because of the leak was only 2 days to 2 weeks. I knew immediately what they were going to come and say to me because I had already been in the ER 6 times up to that point and dismissed, majorly dismissed, besides one ER doctor. And I remember you. And trust me, I haven't forgotten. And I will find you when I can to thank you. That ER doctor came to my bedside like I thought he was. I called my husband. So my husband made it just at the same time that the doctor came to my bedside. I just lost my bowels. And he told me that there was nothing wrong with me. Tried to tell me the same thing that I watched him tell the young lady that was pregnant. And if you're out there, please find me because I pray for you every day and your baby. I started playing my news clip from Mahalani Richardson. That's the only thing that got me admitted, even though my colon is so swollen and I still need a biopsy. So then I was admitted. I was not allowed a phone in my room. I had my cell phone, but we all know cell phones don't work in Triple R. I was in a room by myself. I went through 5 days of severe harassment, changing my diet to applesauce, apples, lettuce for 3 days, things that I could not eat, waiting to see if I would get angry. 5 days, they try to convince me to accept the diagnosis of pancreatitis because it is the only diagnosis that is close to hydrocarbon toxicity. I stood my ground. I was shocked. I thought after all these years, the same doctors that have been treating me, especially this year, see me go to 98 pounds 5 times, thought they would be jumping for joy. They finally figured out what's wrong with me, and now they know what's wrong with my kids. My daughter's had phantom belly pain since she was 18 months old. Again, I can't get into all of hers because I don't want it to come back later in life on her. Sorry, this is hard. It's the first time I'm talking about it. I'm sorry.
So retaliation, what
I would-
happened with your spouse?
Oh, well, they tried to put a psych hold on me. They tried to take away visitation from my children. While I was in the hospital, I was threatened with arrest for Mahalani coming out to interview me at the home. My husband was threatened with court-martial and was basically told to stand me down. Little did he know I'd already done another interview. Oops. That didn't work. Then they told the nurses to stand me down. Then when the flushing team came, an AMR had failed. And I started immediately calling everybody that AMR had failed. I still had massive fuel. When they flushed our neighborhood, I could see that when they were flushing, straight fuel just going into the sewer system. And they were still running sprinklers. So I thought with AMR failing, woohoo, here comes the cavalry. I got the top brass. No, instead, because I asked for the original results to my water and said that they could not flush until I had those original results, and I started calling for them to take a sample from my home the day of flush and then right after flush, and then use the results from the 30th so they had the qualitative data. My husband was threatened with an Article 92.
What is an Article 92?
Failure to obey a lawful order. I wasn't denying them flushing. I welcomed them flushing at first, especially when I thought it was treated. And then when I learned it wasn't treated, didn't want them to flush it. But if that meant I got my original results because they were going to do it anyways, flush away because I know it's going to fail. I know it's going to fail. My home has been severe since October of 2020 when we moved in. So we have been threatened with arrest, court-martial, Article 92. I had a psychiatric hold put on me that the psychiatrist wouldn't even do once she realized it was me from the news article with Mahalani. So Mahalani, you saved me multiple times by coming to my house and seeing and feeling. I've had numerous news reporters ask to come to my home again, and I'm terrified to allow them to do it. I've even had a film crew that is personal friends, just photographers, want to come document the house for my own personal documentation. I'm terrified to do it because I'm terrified they will arrest me. I've asked for permission and I've been told that, you know the consequences of your actions if you do what you do, but it's your choice. So in that area, I'm stand down because I have 2 kids that I need to protect. But the retaliation is real, guys. We all know it's real. And the stories that I've heard, so that's another major thing that we are all advocating for, and that is at the top of my priority list.
So Jamie's story of retaliation is not unique. I hear stories of retaliation every single day. Okay, final question, one more.
Lots of questions in here. Maybe you guys can give a little bit more color on feedback from your meetings today. Questions around, did the members seem to know about the situation? Are they taking it seriously? Are there some early ideas about congressional action?
Yes, I'm going to answer and then I'll let that be the last question. Uh, Members and their staff could not have been more supportive of these families. They listened, they took notes, they asked, how can we help? And we went through the list of things, or Jamie and Mandy went through the list of things that they asked for, very specific things. What can Congress do? The first thing they can do is they can hold the Navy accountable to release the results. This is immediate action. They have information that they're not sharing with the public. There has been so much mistrust, and the least they can do is provide the information that they already have. Release the list of contaminants. The next thing that they can do is hold the Navy accountable to provide adequate health care to the people who come in and ask for basic labs to be drawn. It's ridiculous that so many people have gone in and asked for the most basic panels and have been denied. The standard that Mandy described is the standard of care when you've been exposed. EKG, X-ray, basic panels, CBC, and flush the system. And it's not okay that she got it and her kids didn't. And that story has played out across the rest of our clients. So those are the immediate action items. But then the long-term action items are what they described too, which is model legislation after Camp Lejeune. Make sure that people have medical care, presumptive medical care going forward for the maladies that we know that they're going to have, right? Have a third party come in and use the science right now, do the testing right now, figure out who has been there, and then make sure that we're tracking those people as they go forward and that we're providing the care that they need. One of the things that came up again and again in our meetings was that we have an opportunity here, and Congress has an opportunity here, because when Agent Orange happened, or even Camp Lejeune, you're finding out about those exposures way after the fact. Here we have an exposure that we know about right now. We should be on the ground right now, so that what happened with Camp Lejeune and the health effects that happened over time doesn't happen here, because we catch it early, right? Don't we want to catch those cancers early, or whatever it is, the heart disease, whatever's going to happen? Let's catch it now. Let's provide the healthcare now. We should be overwhelming these families with care. We need to be getting them to safe housing yesterday, right? These are just basic things that need to happen right now. And we ask our congressional leadership, or they asked, I should say, congressional leadership to make it happen. So where do we go from here? Yes, and toxicology. So there are people chiming in with the importance of having toxicologists on island and having environmental health care, right? I represent a lot of military families in other contexts as well. And there should be environmental doctors, because we know there are exposures. There are toxic exposures on every base in the country, right? Let's have an environmental health center on every base in the country. These are things that can happen. And we hope that drawing attention to this issue will continue the conversation. It is going to be a very long road. And we do not pretend to know, to have all the answers today. But the conversations that were started today, and the listening ears, and the staffers who are here, even in this room, who have already been dedicating their time to not just Red Hill, but Camp Lejeune and other toxic exposure issues for our military. I mean, these people do this day in and day out, and they're fighting for you. And, we're just aiding them in that process, and hope to continue the conversation over a long period of time. So where do we go from here with Just Well and our efforts? I'm coming back to Hawaii the week of February 21st. We're going to have more town halls. We're going to have a local partnership that's announced at that time. We're going to file our first SF-95s, and we're going to tell the Navy that we have, now over 100 clients and more claims coming in every day. And we believe that the Federal Tort Claims Act is just one way that the Navy can make this right. So we're going to redirect our efforts back to building our legal cases from here on out. And we know that our clients are going to continue the congressional effort in the conversations that were started today. Thank you for tuning in, paying attention to this issue. It was an honor to be here and to have these conversations today, even though we don't feel comfortable because we've been advised not to, mention exactly who we spoke to. We can say that they care. The leaders here who are working on these issues and are on the relevant committees, they care and their staffers care. And we're so glad and so honored to have brought so many of your stories here to them. So thank you. And as always, to be continued.